Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unpopular Opinion. And guys, today I'm following up on a request that a lot of you have been asking me to do for years. Today we're doing ourselves a movie versus movie battle between Red Dragon and Manhunter.
No, that is incidental.
Now, Hannibal Lecter is one of the most iconic characters in cinema history, and he's also cinema's greatest villain.
I've already suggested how. The answer was right in front of you. You looked but didn't see.
Now, The Silence of the Lambs, released in 1991, is responsible for taking this literary character and catapulting him into international superstardom. And Anthony Hopkin's portrayal of Hannibal Lecter is immortal.
I'll help you catch him, Clarice.
But what many people don't know is Anthony Hopkins was not the first actor to play Hannibal Lecter. In fact, Hannibal Lecter made his first on-screen appearance in the 1986 Michael Mann movie Manhunter.
That's the same atrocious aftershave you wore in court 3 years ago.
Manhunter was the first adaptation of Thomas Harris's novel Red Dragon, and Red Dragon is the first novel that introduced us to Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Manhunter was not successful when it first hit theaters. In fact, I'm putting that mildly. It was a box office bomb where fans, audiences, critics gave it mixed reviews. And it wasn't until director Jonathan Demme adapted the second novel in the Hannibal Lecter series, Silence of the Lambs, that fans decided to revisit Manhunter.
Get my car.
Now, after retroactive revisits and assessments and the passing of time, audiences are a lot more receptive to the movie. In fact, it now has a cult following and is quite popular, actually. Audiences now appreciate it for its own unique style and its own unique take on the character, and it stands out in the Hannibal Lecter series. So when Anthony Hopkins revisited the role in 2002 for the Brett Ratner prequel of Red Dragon, a lot of fans have been asking the question, which version is better? Is it Michael Mann's Manhunter or is it Brett Ratner's Red Dragon? Guys, today that's exactly what we are going to be finding out. But before we get into the main topic of the video, guys, just a friendly reminder to hit that like button, hit that subscribe. Guys, just one like goes a long way and really, really helps me out. Believe it or not, you can make a difference right now by hitting that like and that subscribe button. It costs you nothing to do so. It's totally free. And like I said, it really, really helps me out. So right now, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. That will be linked in the description below. But guys, let's get right into this. Now, I usually do a 10-round winner-takes-all type of video in my movie versus movie battles, but today I'm going to be doing it a little differently. I'm going to be separating certain aspects of the film and then comparing which one did it better and which one was superior. So for example, we're going to be talking about which was the better protagonist, which movie had the better villain, which portrayal of Lecter was superior, what was more faithful to the novel, and of course, what movie was more exciting. So let's jump right into this, guys. So the plot of the story is there's a serial killer on the loose who kills entire families during the full moon, and when the FBI is at an end and hits a dead end in the investigation, Jack Crawford calls his old protege Will Graham out of retirement to come help with the investigation. Round one, Protagonist. So the first thing we're going to be assessing is which movie had the better Will Graham. In Red Dragon, he was portrayed by Edward Norton.
You took your gloves off, didn't you, you son of a bitch?
And in Manhunter, he was played by William Peterson.
Didn't you, you son of a bitch? You touched her with your bare hands, and then you put your gloves back on.
Will Graham is an FBI profiler investigator, and he's a legend because he's the one who caught Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Commissioner was saying that you're the one who got Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and then Dr. Lecter 3 years ago.
He has a unique gift that gives him a lot of empathy, therefore he's able to think like the criminally insane.
Lecter killed 9 people, didn't he?
9 that we know of. 2 didn't die.
So he's able to understand their minds and he can think like the psychotic, and this helps him catch the psychos that he's after. He sees this disturbing gift as a curse because he has to constantly battle with these insidious thoughts as he walks the fine line between sane and crazy. He's a damaged and sick mind, and he even had a mental breakdown after one case. In the process of catching Lecter, he was critically injured and he retired from the FBI. So in Red Dragon, Edward Norton plays the character as an everyman with a creative imagination. He's good at his job, and he has full control over his mind.
He'll have to take his chances too. A roof can fall on anybody.
William Petersen in Manhunter, however, he's very intense, and you can tell he goes in too deep in these investigations when he's trying to get into the mind of a psycho.
I'll tell you when it's too fucking late. Until then, we go as late as I want to take it.
Not only that, but the intensity that he brings to the role is on a much higher level. Honestly, Petersen was born to play this role.
Just you and me now, sport. I'm gonna find you, goddammit.
Norton did a good job, but the one thing that his Graham lacks is the fact that he relies way too much on Lecter to help with the case. Whereas in Manhunter, Petersen's Graham, he goes way too hard, way too deep to get into the mind of the killer, and then he reaches his conclusions on his own. In Red Dragon, Norton's Graham is insightful, but all of the major breakthroughs on the case came from his sessions with Dr. Lecter.
After what he tried to pull...
I think Lecter picked up on something in the missing part of that note.
Petersen was able to bring the intensity and go the distance. Therefore, when he catches the killer, it's because of his own efforts. Not to mention, it looks like at any minute, this guy could snap, lose control, and easily turn into a sick mind. Honestly, the intensity and the vigor that Petersen brings to the role matches that of Graham in the book.
Listen, after we've worked the note, I want to replace it in Lecter's cell. I don't want Lecter to know that we found it.
When I read the novel of Red Dragon, I can actually picture William Petersen as Graham. Since Petersen matches the character's ferocity of the novel, I don't really have that same thing with Edward Norton. So winner, Manhunter. Round 2, villain. Now it's time to see which movie had the better villain. In Manhunter, actor Thomas Noonan portrays Francis Dollarhyde, aka the Tooth Fairy.
You are privy to a great becoming and you recognize nothing.
In Red Dragon, it's Ray Fiennes.
What? You told me what?
So the Tooth Fairy is a serial killer who kills entire families, and he does unspeakable vile acts to their bodies. He has a cleft lip and palate and a seriously damaged mental state. Now, in terms of physical appearance and description, Thomas Noonan, he matches what Dollarhyde is described in the novel. He's tall, muscular, middle-aged, and blonde. However, Manhunter eliminates a lot of the killer's backstory and eliminates basically his entire motive for why he's doing what he's doing. Red Dragon preserves the majority of Francis Dollarhyde's background, and it keeps intact his motives, which is exactly the same as it is in the book.
I am the dragon, and you call me insane.
His overall character arc, which Manhunter excludes, is he's a serial killer, he kills entire families during the full moon, and he does this under the influence of his alternate personality, who he thinks is the dominant figure in William Blake's painting, The Great Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed with the Sun. And he believes that killing these families brings him closer to fully becoming the dragon. Now guys, I'm gonna be blunt here. Tom Noonan did an awful job in portraying Francis Dollarhyde. He's not scary at all, and he comes off as more flamboyant than terrifying.
You and the others, you owe me all.
Oh my god, where is my homework? I am freaking out!
Also, eliminating the whole Red Dragon aspect of his MO just makes him another killer. Not necessarily the damaged, tragic character that Francis Dollarhyde is supposed to be. Guys, not to mention, he's absent for most of the film, and when he does appear on screen, he's not scary at all. On the other hand, guys, Ray Fiennes was terrifying.
But fear is not what you owe me, Mr. Lowndes. You owe me all.
He played the character so scary, but he also did it in a way that managed to make us, the audience, feel sorry for the guy and to feel compassionate for the killer.
I wanted to trust you. You felt so good.
So we're scared of him, and we feel sorry for him all at the same time. And this version not only matches much more accurately to the book, but it also makes it more interesting and scary. So winner, Red Dragon.
Red Dragon, correct.
Round 3. Lecter. Now we're going to be seeing who's the better Hannibal Lecter. In Manhunter, he was played by Brian Cox.
Didn't you really feel so bad because killing him felt so good, and why shouldn't it feel good?
In Red Dragon, he was played by Anthony Hopkins.
If you recall, Will, our last collaboration ended rather messily.
To the surprise of a lot of people, Brian Cox is actually the first actor to play Hannibal Lecter, not Anthony Hopkins. And his take on the character is completely different from how Anthony Hopkins approached the role. Anthony Hopkins plays the character as an intense, intellectual, intimidating force, whereas Brian Cox portrays the character as a more casual, normal, nonchalant psycho.
You want to know how he's choosing them, don't you?
I thought you might have some ideas.
Why should I tell you?
So he's not in your face, and he actually seems like a normal guy.
This is a very shy boy, Will. What were the yards like?
Now, Lecter does not really appear that much in the movie Manhunter. In fact, he appears in the movie Manhunter as much as he appears in the novel. He's a minor character, but he has huge impacts on the plot. Also, in the movie Manhunter, Hannibal Lecter is not a cannibal, so the aspect of him savagely attacking a nurse or cannibalizing his victims, it's completely eliminated for Manhunter. So Brian Cox is Hannibal Lecter. He used to attack college girls, kind of like Ted Bundy.
While Lecter was attacking college girls, and he killed them. In bad ways.
Now, honestly, to me, that is a pretty big damper. Because Lecter, being a very dangerous cannibal, who will strike like a ravaging snapping turtle if you're not careful, is a huge part of his character. That's what makes him so dangerous and scary. It's not that his mind is evil, damaged, and dark, but also sharp and very smart. It's the fact that this guy is strong, can overpower a grown man, and is very, very savage. So reducing him to a killer of young girls, it takes away a lot of the fear factor, in my opinion. And now, I'm not downplaying the wickedness of attacking young girls, but it doesn't take a super strong, dangerous, violent individual to be able to do something like that. Whereas in the novel, and how Anthony Hopkins portrays him, no one is safe from him. And he has to be restrained at all times because he can overpower grown men. Now, in my opinion, I think Anthony Hopkins was at his best in Silence of the Lambs, but he still delivers a solid performance in Red Dragon.
Does it? I hadn't noticed.
Oh, you will.
His sharp mind and his powerful intellect is displayed very well in Red Dragon. And Anthony Hopkins is intimidating and cunning, much like how he's described in the novel.
Clever work on his note, by the way. And that blackout was an especially nice touch.
Not to mention, Anthony Hopkins did win an Oscar for portraying this character. So, winner, Red Dragon, round 4. Faithfulness to the novel. So Manhunter is not faithful to Thomas Harris's novel. Red Dragon, it's not a perfect adaptation, but it follows the story and the structure more faithful and more closer to the book than Manhunter does. Manhunter leaves out a lot of important background details. It alters the history of its characters, and the ending is completely different. So the whole aspect of the Red Dragon really being excluded from the movie, it totally alters the killer. So this deviates from the character from the novel almost entirely because the pain and the whole Red Dragon thing is only mentioned a few times in the movie Manhunter. So overall, it's not even really worth bringing up because it doesn't play a huge part in the movie. And not for naught, it cuts a lot of Francis Dollarhyde's screen time because he doesn't really appear that much in the movie compared to him being consistently seen throughout the novel. Red Dragon is a lot more faithful to the novel, and the differences that are in Red Dragon the movie, at least the differences are based on some form of similarity between the novel. I mean, I would say the biggest difference between Red Dragon, the movie, and the book is how much they feature Hannibal Lecter, because Hannibal Lecter doesn't really appear that much in the novel, but being that the character was so popular from Silence of the Lambs, and this movie's a prequel to that, the filmmakers, they knew that there had to be more scenes featuring Lecter, so he's in more scenes in the movie than he is in the book. And also, the ending was tweaked a little bit for the movie, but it overall follows the same formula. Not to mention Dollarhyde's relationship with his blind co-worker and the implications it has for the plot, it matches the book very similar. Swinging back to Manhunter, I think the thing that they got right was how they portrayed Will Graham. I think the transition of Graham from page to film was flawless. And the meeting between Lecter and Graham was spot on in Manhunter. I mean, the dialogue was almost basically plucked from the novel word for word.
But you might be curious to see if you're smarter than the person I'm looking for.
Then by implication, you think you're smarter than me since you caught me.
Also, the adversarial nature between the two characters was displayed in Manhunter very well.
Then how did you catch me, Will?
You had disadvantages.
What disadvantages?
You're insane.
In my opinion, I think it was overall better done in Manhunter, not to mention, in the novel, Graham and Lecter only meet with each other once, and the movie captures that meeting fantastic. And based off of how it unfolded in the novel and the original author Thomas Harris's commentary on it, I think Manhunter is more faithful to that. Because their conversation, it's described as being like swordplay between two fencers sparring. It's a quick back and forth between sparring opponents. They're quick with their exchange, and they're rapid with their responses, much like the novel.
Don't think you can persuade me with appeals to my intellectual vanity.
I don't think I'll persuade you at all. You'll either do it or you won't.
Lecter has responses and retorts on deck, and it's very, very quick. Whereas in Red Dragon, Anthony Hopkins is more slow and calculating in his deliveries.
I need your advice, Dr. Lecter.
Birmingham and Atlanta. You want to know how he's choosing them, don't you?
So even though I like the meeting between Lecter and Graham better in Manhunter, it's not enough to make this a more faithful adaptation. It's undeniable that the Red Dragon from Brett Ratner is much more faithful to the novel. Winner, Red Dragon. Round 5, thrills. Red Dragon is full of suspense. Whether it be from the investigation, the deranged mind of the killer, or the opening sequence where we see Lecter getting caught, those were great. But I think this movie's strength is the fact that Red Dragon is one of the few films to successfully pull off a double climax. So in the movie, much like in the book, Francis Dollarhyde kidnaps his blind coworker. Then he sets his house on fire. He fakes his death to trick the FBI and the audience. We're led to believe that the guy is dead, only for him to then show up at Graham's house. And this is where the two get into a psychological confrontation where Graham uses Dollarhyde's childhood trauma to provoke him into a fistfight.
Don't cry at me, you little faggot! Apologize!
And then this devolves into a close quarter shootout.
Well,
Molly, get down!
That was all superb, by the way. It was very amazing. It was very thrilling. That foreboding sense of danger and dread, it's felt all throughout Red Dragon. I mean, this is a very exciting movie that gets the heart pumping. Manhunter, not so much.
What you moving in slow motion for, man? I'm being mugged!
There's not really any thrill sequences until the end, because the killer barely appears on screen. And when he does appear on screen, he's lame. He's not scary, it's not intimidating. So the scenes where he's torturing his victims, it doesn't come off as exciting or scary or thrilling. It comes off as lame.
Look at the screen. Do you see?
Before me, you were a slug in the sun.
oh God, I'm so bored. Somebody help me.
And the ending climax, oh my gosh, that was just awful. So Francis Dollarhyde in Manhunter kidnaps his blind coworker. He takes her back to his place. Then he starts to play really weird music. And he's slowly about to kill her in a really cheesy way. Then Graham jumps through the window. And then they have a shootout with the cops. The end result of this shootout is Graham killing Dollarhyde by shooting him to death. And this was just so lame in my opinion. I mean, it wasn't filmed in an exciting way. In fact, the way it was filmed was very, very sloppy. I mean, if you just watch the movie, you can see editing and pacing errors where one shot just abruptly jump cuts to another, and it looks sloppy. It looks really, really bad. The shootout was genuinely awful, filmed terribly, and it just looks visually ugly. Like Dollarhyde shooting the lights out in his own house, breaking his table, or bashing through his wallpaper. That was just so stupid. And not for naught, that part where he shoots his floor, where on the floor there's like ketchup, eggs, milk, mustard. That was just gross. Seeing it all mashed together, just gross. Manhunter doesn't really have a lot of intense thrill sequences. I mean, it does have moments of drama, but not enough suspense. Winner, Red Dragon. Well, guys, we've weighed all the facts and the results are in, and the winner is Red Dragon. There is no question that Red Dragon won this. It is vastly superior to Manhunter. Guys, this might rub a lot of people the wrong way, but Manhunter is not a good movie. In fact, I'm very shocked that it has the popularity that it has. In my opinion, I think Michael Mann and Brian Cox should be so grateful and thank Jonathan Demme and Anthony Hopkins literally every day of their life for what they did in Silence of the Lambs, because if it wasn't for Silence of the Lambs, and this is undeniable, if it wasn't for Silence of the Lambs, and if it wasn't for the popularity of that movie, no one would remember Manhunter.
Beneath the yellow folder, you'll find your latest rejection slip from the archives.
Honestly, I'm surprised this movie has a fan base, and I'm aware that a lot of people say that the visual style and a lot of the music and the intense character stuff influenced other films in the same genre like CSI, Heat, or Miami Vice. I get that, that's cool, but the movie itself, it's just an awful adaptation of a great story. This was a terrible movie, and the fact that it deviated so much from its source material, it bothered me a lot. And a major problem I think this movie had is the fact that Michael Mann adapted it like it was a cop movie, not as like a mind-fucker, deranged psychological thriller just like Thomas Harris envisioned in his novel.
Very good, well.
So Mann filmed it almost completely as like an 80s type cop movie, and it was mostly told through law enforcement's perspective. And that just doesn't work for a movie like Red Dragon or for a story like Red Dragon. Now don't get me wrong, there are law enforcement aspects of the book, but there's also a big chunk of it dedicated to getting into the mind of the killer and actually being in the mind of the killer, and sharing a lot of the novel between the perspective of the killer's mind, his motives, his background, and between law enforcement trying to catch him. So the idea of the psyche of the lunatic, Manhunter doesn't do it. And honestly, like the fact that Manhunter was very unfaithful to the novel, that was kind of the nail in the coffin for it. And I feel like a hypocrite saying that because, small tangent, when I was a kid, the Harry Potter movies were coming out. I loved the movies, I'd watch all the movies, and a lot of my friends read the books. I didn't. And I was very sick and tired of my friends growing up saying in a very snobbish way, well, I don't like the movies because they left a lot of the things from the book out. And as a kid who didn't read, it just sounded ridiculous to me. Now, I read the Harry Potter books in high school. My opinion of the movies hasn't changed, but with this and with the Hannibal Lecter book series, I can now actually understand where my friends were coming from.
You know, I believe we're making progress, and that's what our pilgrim is doing.
Guys, the Hannibal Lecter books, well, at least the first two, mean so much to me. And I love them dearly. And if an adaptation of one of them isn't done faithfully or done correctly, it bothers me. And it's gonna make me dislike it. And guys, you can call me a prude or a Puritan all you want, but I'm gonna be honest here. All of those sex scenes in Manhunter with the erotic music, I didn't want to see that. That made me really uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to watch, and it threw off the mood of the movie.
It would be obscene.
You don't make it easy, do you? Still one aims to please.
At least in Red Dragon, in the scene where Dollarhyde is hooking up with his blind coworker, that was uncomfortable because it was designed to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to feel icky about the situation due to the circumstances surrounding it. In Manhunter, it just wasn't the same. It was a bizarre scene filmed with bizarre music that just was really uncomfortable to watch. Like, if you're watching that with your parents, I guarantee you're not gonna be appreciative of it. And another thing, I'm very tired of a lot of fans insisting that Brian Cox's take on Hannibal Lecter is somehow a genius or brilliant take on the character. No offense to the guy, because I like him, but Brian Cox was nothing special as Hannibal Lecter. It is interesting to see someone else play the character, and it is interesting to see how audiences would have reacted to the character before he became a superstar due to Silence of the Lambs. But honestly, it doesn't require a lot of talent to play the character as Brian Cox did.
You had disadvantages.
What disadvantages?
You're insane.
He just played him as a normal dude who doesn't come off as dangerous or disarming. And I also don't get the sense from Brian Cox's performance that he has a vastly superior knowledge. And I don't get any sense of danger or fear from watching him. And based off the way that Manhunter portrayed and built up the character, I don't see a sense of superior IQ that Lecter is supposed to have. Now, there are going to be people who will say something to the effect of, Manhunter's take and Brian Cox's performance is scary because sometimes evil people and crazy people can blend in and you can't usually tell if someone's crazy or evil. But from an artistic point of view, I don't really agree with that. And honestly, I can't picture or envision Brian Cox's version of Hannibal Lecter being a savage cannibal who attacked that nurse, or being able to overpower two correction officers and dismember them in a bloody escape. I mean, I can't see him doing that, especially not in the way that Anthony Hopkins did. Don't get me wrong, Cox did a good job, but it's not even in the same league as how Anthony Hopkins portrayed the character. Now guys, before we finish this, I do want to say a few positives about Manhunter. The style of filmmaking was cool. Michael Mann has a very unique, very specific type of way he films his films. His visual style is unique, it's distinct, and it stands out. The way the film was shot was pretty cool for the most part. minus that shootout. From a technical point of view, I love the extreme close-ups, or the sequences where he does slow-mo, or he makes the pace of the film go quicker. The lighting, the cinematography, that was all pretty impressive for the most part. And not to mention that 80s techno cop music. Despite the fact it's not fitting for a Hannibal Lecter film, it was actually composed very well and sounds super cool. Now here are some of the things that the movie did get right. The first half of the movie was really, really good. Because when they're being faithful to the novel, when they're following the novel, or when they're doing the investigation stuff like trying to get fingerprints or analyzing the note on the toilet paper that was in Lecter's cell, that was superb. And honestly, like I said, William Peterson was born to play Will Graham. He knocked it out of the park. And out of all of the Hannibal Lecter movies, I think my favorite version of Jack Crawford, better than Harvey Keitel, better than Scott Glenn. Manhunter had the best version of Jack Crawford. Unquestionably, Dennis Farina is the best Jack Crawford and did a phenomenal job in Manhunter.
You're fucking right, I did, and I do it again! Great.
It probably doesn't hurt the fact that the guy was a cop in real life, and he probably brought a lot of his cop techniques to the movie, and that's what makes him so great. But the movie began to sour once they introduced the killer. Honestly, how poorly they introduced the killer, how poorly they adapted Francis Dollarhyde from page to screen, and honestly, Tom Noonan's horrible performance is pretty much what killed the movie for me. And the ending was just awful. That terrible shootout with the really lame villain and how sloppy it was filmed. Lame villain, lame shootout, horribly constructed. And that weird, bizarre music completely derailed the movie for me. That was just unforgivable. That was the moment where the movie was derailed. Like, prior to that, there was a lot of things that made me go like, you know what? I'm not liking this movie, and the movie was just derailed after that. And I'm very sorry for being so harsh because I wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to like this movie. But the ending really ruined it. The fact that it was unfaithful, and the fact that the character of Hannibal Lecter was completely nerfed, no longer a savage cannibal, no longer a super smart genius, it bothers me. Overall, I think Red Dragon is the superior film. Not only does it follow the novel in a more accurate way, but it has better performances. It was a better Lecter, more exciting, more thrilling, and its soundtrack was really on point. So there we have it, Manhunter versus Red Dragon, and Red Dragon takes the cake. Overall, Red Dragon is the winner. Well guys, there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you took something out of it. If you disagree, comment below by letting me know. What do you like better? Do you like Manhunter more or Red Dragon more? Have you read the books? Have you seen the movies? Guys, comment that all below. In fact, I have done 2 Red Dragon movie versus book What's the Difference videos. I did Red Dragon movie versus book What's the Difference with the 2002 version, and I did Manhunter movie versus book. So you should check those out. Those will be linked in the description below. Well guys, thank you for watching. I very much appreciate that. And if you came this far, maybe you're willing to do me another favor by hitting that like button and smashing the subscribe. Guys, remember, 1 like goes a long way and it really helps me out. Costs you nothing to do so. It's totally free, so hit the like, hit the subscribe. Follow me on Instagram. That will be linked in the description below. And that's all I have for you guys. So I'll see you next time on the next Unpopular Opinion.
I'll call you if I think of anything else. Would you perhaps like to leave me a home number?